Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Victoria, and today I am going to be talking about my favorite books that I've read so far this year. I recently did the mid-year book freakout tag. I will link that video down in the description box, but in that video I talked about, like, one of the questions was what is your favorite book so far this year, and I think I mentioned like 2 or 3 that were my favorites that I've read, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth and give you more of a broader video of all of the books that I've read so far this year that have the possibility of ending up on my favorites of 2022 video. I think I did my top 15 possible favorite books from this year, so I am going to let you know what they are and talk a little bit about them. So the first one is one that I have mentioned a couple of times that's going to end up 100% on my favorite books of 2022 list. It's the one that I mentioned in that video, and that is Manacled by Senlinyu. It is a Draco and Hermione fan fiction, and it's really, really long, and it takes place during a world where Harry Potter has died and the Resistance has lost the war, and Lord Voldemort reigns like supreme, and he installs this breeding program like a la Handmaid's Tale, where the women of the Resistance are given to high-ranking members of the Order in order to procreate and create a new generation of wizards that will follow Lord Voldemort. And it's very dark, got a lot going on, but it's really, really amazing, and it's a love story between Hermione and Draco, and it's so good. But that one is 100% going to end up on my favorites of 2022. It's my favorite book 100% that I've read so far this year, so had to mention that again. It's the one that I mentioned in that video. Absolutely loved it. Another one that I mentioned in that video is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. This one is a very different style than what Manacled is. This one is a sort of small town vibe, slow burn, grumpy sunshine, single dad romance. A heroine, I believe her name is Aurora. She comes to this small town that she lived in as a child, and she ends up moving into the apartment above the garage of this man's house. But when she shows up to move in, he's like, "What in the hell are you doing on my property?" And it turns out that his teenage son actually rented her the apartment and not the dad. And so he wants to kick her out, and she is like, "Please, please let me stay. I just want to be in this town." And so he agrees to let her stay for a short time, and it is a slow burn romance between the Aurora and the dad, and it's so good. I absolutely love it. It has that Mariana Zapata slow burn quality, but it has it to like an extent where like their fingers would brush and I would be like, oh my god, oh my god. I was like so anticipating the two of them being together. I wanted it so badly that it was so good, so well done. I absolutely adored it, and it's my top 3 Mariana Zapata books ever. It's so good. Another one that I have mentioned quite a lot on my channel as being one of my favorites of this year is Broken Vow by Sophie Lark. This is a bodyguard romance, mafia bodyguard romance. The heroine, Riona, is a lawyer for her family who is in the Irish mafia, and she has somebody who is coming after her and wants to kill her, and so her family and friends end up hiring her a bodyguard named Raylan, who comes to protect her. Riona does not want a bodyguard, but Raylan is very, very excited about spending time with Riona, and it is a grumpy sunshine, but Riona is like the grumpy and Raylan is the sunshine, and it's so good. And they end up having this amazing romance because Riona has to like really break down her walls. She has so much of a guard up that she really has to like be vulnerable in front of Raylan because she's in danger, and it's so good. The romance that develops is fantastic. It is my absolute favorite Sophie Lark book. It's so good. Another one is another grumpy sunshine. Can you tell I like the grumpy sunshine romances? And that is Unraveling Him by Claire Kingsley. This is a small town Grumpy Sunshine where Evan Bailey is a mechanic, and he has this woman come up to his shop, and she is the Sunshiny character, and she needs to use his mechanic shop in order to fix her car. And she says in return for letting her use the mechanic shop, she will help him get his hands on this used car that he needs to restore. And so they end up going on a road trip to go pick up this used car, and within that road trip it has great forced proximity and only one bed situation, and they really like fall in love in that road trip. And then when they come back from the road trip, the heroine ends up also staying with Evan at his house because she has nowhere else to go. So it has really great forced proximity elements to it, and it's so cute. Another small town romance that I loved is Rustic Hearts by Amber Kelly. This one I read during a new author reading vlog that I did, and it was so good. A heroine lives in New York City. Her mom took her away from her ranch in, I don't know where the ranch was, small town, country somewhere, away from her father, and she's been told her entire life that her father had cheated on her mother and that her mother left him because he was moving his mistress into the house. And so the heroine, has not spoken to her father or her father's side of the family in the last like 10 years or something. And she gets a call from her aunt on her father's side that her grandmother has passed away, and that the aunt wants her to come home for the funeral and the will reading. And she has a lot of like open issues about this and her father's side of the family. So her friend convinces her to go to just like try and like get some answers. And so she goes back to her small hometown, and she ends up having to deal with all of this family secrets and drama and reconnecting with her father's side of the family, while also falling in love with a boy from the hometown, from this small town. And I really loved it. It was so good. I loved the family aspect of it, and the way that the heroine really had missed her family and missed this ranch that she had grown up on. It was so sweet, and I really loved it. Another favorite is The Long Game by Rachel Reed. This is book 2 to Heated Rivalry with Ilya and Shane. It is an hockey romance. It's like rivals to friends to lovers, and it takes place over years and years. Heated Rivalry ends on a happy for now, and the readers of that book had been waiting for their HEA for years, and Rachel Reed finally released this book, and it lived up entirely to expectations. I gave it 5 stars. I freaking loved it. It was fantastic, and I'm so happy that Shane and Ilya are now fully happy together. It's great. Another one that I absolutely loved is Second Semester by QB Tyler. This is a short, like, novella length. It's only like 150 pages at most, and I absolutely loved it. It is a dad's best friend romance with a virgin heroine. The heroine ends up getting an internship at her father's law firm, and her father's best friend, who is a partner at that law firm, good, up kind of taking her under his wing, and they develop this relationship, and it's so good. I absolutely loved it. It was one of my first QB Tyler books. My first QB Tyler book was first semester, and then I read second semester, and I loved first semester, but second semester was so much better. It was so good. And I absolutely loved it and would totally recommend it. If you're looking to start reading QB Tyler and want like a taboo quick book, read Second Semester. It's amazing. Another one is Irresponsible Puck Boy by Eden Finley and Saxon James. This is a hockey friends to lovers romance, and it's amazing. One of the heroes has always been in love with his best friend, but his best friend is straight, and the best friend has this girlfriend, and he's trying to decide if he would even be willing to get married, let alone get married to her. And so he says, "Hey friend, will you have a fake wedding with me so I can stand up there and see if I could actually even like get through a wedding?" And so they end up having this like fake wedding in Vegas. Turns out they got married for real, and and their team finds out, because they play hockey on the same team, and their team finds out and is like, oh shit, we have a PR scandal on our hands now. And it's fantastic. I absolutely loved it. Their friendship was so good, and I loved the discovery of his sexuality, the one who thought he was straight, the discovery of his sexuality, because he really just like never gave himself the option to not be straight. And so once he started thinking about it and started like actually exploring what it would be to be not straight, he realized that that made perfect sense for who he is as a person. And so I really loved it, and it was one of my favorite Eden Finley and Saxon James books, which says a lot because I love Eden Finley and Saxon James writing together. Another one that I absolutely loved that I did read for a vlog is Sea of Ruin by Pam Godwin. I read this for reading BOOKTUBERs favorite books, or reading recommendations from my favorite booktubers. I will link that video down below also. So I read Sea of Ruin on Jess's recommendation, and I freaking loved it. I actually gave it 4.5 stars, but I gave it 4.5 stars because it's one scene that happens in the book. But I absolutely loved the book overall. It is fantastic. It is a pirate historical romance, and it was so much more than I thought it was going to be. It definitely is dark, but it was so much more of a complex romance than I was expecting, and it blew me away. Pam Godwin, her writing in this book was fantastic, and I am surprised it took me so long to read it because it had been on my TBR for years. Faking Miss Right by Claire Kingsley is the next one that I have listed, and this one is probably one of my favorite fake dating romances now. It is book 1 in her Dirty Martini Running Club series, and it is a boss assistant type romance where the heroine is the assistant to Shepard Calloway, who is this high-powered CEO, and when he needs a fake girlfriend to tell his dad about, when his dad unknowingly starts dating Shepard's ex-girlfriend, he calls his assistant to come to this gala and meet his dad, and she shows up and he's like, this is my girlfriend, and they end up having to not only fake date at this gala, but end up having to move in together after Shepard's dad tells Shepard about some financial and health issues that he's having, and it has to move in with Shepard. So they end up having to fake date while living together, and it is so good. She gets to know the real Shepard Calloway behind the high-powered CEO facade, and it's really good. HEADCASE by ONLEY James had to show up on this list. I freaking loved this. This is book 4, I think, in the Necessary Evil series. It is Avi and Zane's book, and it is so good. Zane is a crime reporter, and he discovers this secret about the Mulvaney family, and he wants to question the Mulvaney family or see if he can learn more about it. So he goes to this gala to meet Thomas Mulvaney, but Thomas Mulvaney ends up sending his son Avi, and Avi and Zane end up hooking up, and Avi takes Zane back to his place, and right after they finish hooking up, Avi gets a call from his brother-in-law to help him dump a body. And Zane overhears this call and follows Avi and sees him dumping a body, and is like, well, now I can have a good story for my crime blog. And Avi kidnaps him and says, no, you can't do that. And they develop this romance, and it's fantastic. Absolutely loved it. It was hilarious while also being sweet, while also being a serial killer romance. Like, what? It was so good. The only historical to show up on my 15, unless you count Sea of Ruin, is A Reckless Match by Kate Bateman. This is a rival families romance. It takes place in Wales, where the families are required every year on the same day to show up and shake hands in their neutral land, and if one of the families doesn't show up on that day, then they forfeit the neutral land to the other family. And the heroine's family really needs that money that would come from getting the neutral land, and so she's really hoping that the dude won't show up, but he shows up, and they end up having a romance, and there's intrigue and mystery and so much going on in this book, and it's fantastic. Kate Bateman has an amazing writing style. I really love her historicals. They're always so different and interesting, and not just like the norm for historical, which I really, really love. Another one that I read actually in the freaking beginning of the year, it was like one of the the fifth book that I read, I think, this year, is Waking Olivia by Elizabeth O'Rourke. This one was so good. It is a small age gap, but a significant enough age gap, where it is a coach and a cross-country runner. The heroine, Olivia, was a D1 runner at a school, but she ends up losing her scholarship for her behavior and gets sent to this D3 school instead. And she gets in some hot water with her coach when her coach tells her to not run when she's not at practice, and she shows up to practice super like ragged and tired, and he's like, I can tell you've been running. And it turns out that she actually sleep runs. She has these crazy, crazy nightmares because of some trauma that happened in her past where she sleep runs. And her coach ends up helping her out with it, and they become closer, and it's taboo and forbidden, but so good. I think we're on number 14 now, and that is Tyrant Alpha's Rejected Mate by Casey Wells. This one is a paranormal romance, and the hero is exactly what it says in the title, a Tyrant Alpha. He runs his pack with like iron fist. And the heroine is one of the lower members of the pack. She's walks with a limp. She has a knee injury, and she's like considered this like not a high-powered member of the pack because of it. She's also female, which is like not, the pack looks a little bit down on their females. And so when she finds out that she is the alpha's mate, she lets him know in front of everybody, and he hardcore rejects her. And then spends the rest of the book groveling when he realizes what a horrible mistake that he's made. And it's so good. Really, really loved it. I definitely want to continue with the series. I haven't yet, but it was my first Kate C. Wells, and it was amazing. Then the last one that I'm going to mention, number 15, is Redeemed by Lauren Asher. This one was a huge surprise for me. I actually read this recently, and I loved it. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, but I really, really loved it. And that this one is about a Formula One race car driver named Santiago who ends up getting into a crash while he's in a race, and his leg gets so badly mangled and injured that it has to be amputated. And now it's 3 years later. He has not shown his face in the racing world in 3 years. He hides out in this big house on Lake Como, and the heroine shows up at his house by accident because she is actually from New York City, and she has a really horrible mother and has always wanted to know who her father is. And so the heroine's best friend gives her, for her birthday, a DNA test kit where she ends up getting a match for her father. And she looks him up on the internet, and it tells her where he lives. And so she shows up, but she accidentally goes to the hero's house instead. And so he catches her trying to break into his house, and she has no idea who he is. He thinks she's paparazzi or like trying to get a look at him because he's famous, and she has no idea who he is. But she drops her phone, and so she has to come back the next day to get her phone back. And when she walks into his house to get her phone, he has company who is his sister and his brother-in-law, and they are like, who's this girl walking into your house? And Santiago lies and tells them that it's his girlfriend. And so they end up in a fake dating situation. And it's hilarious. It's really good. I absolutely loved it. I loved the way that Santiago had to work through his injury and his life and like what his life meant. And all of his issues around his self-esteem before he could get with the heroine. Like, the heroine made it very clear that he had to like get to these milestones before he was able to like have a relationship with her, which I think was really, really smart of the heroine, and also really like made Santiago like get off his ass and actually like work through his issues rather than just like drowning in sorrow kind of thing, and I thought that it was done really, really well. I really enjoyed it, and it really surprised me. So yeah, I really loved it. But that is the last one. That is the top 15 favorite books that I've read so far this year. They are in no particular order. I literally went through them and like went through Goodreads and just like wrote down all of them. So they aren't in any sort of order. But yeah, I really, really loved every single one of these and would recommend every single one of these. So that is going to be it for this video. Please like this video if you liked it, and subscribe and stick around so you can see more content from me, and let me know in the comments below what your favorite books that you've read so far this year have been, because I'm always looking for more recommendations. But that is going to be it, so I hope that you have a great day. Bye!